Assalamu alaikum. Can everybody hear and see? Can everybody hear and see? Okay. Alhamdulillah. All right. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Welcome to another episode of Man Logic, where we're addressing issues that are, pretty much specific to the men in our communities. And whether you're Muslim or you're not Muslim, I think the language is pretty much universal, and everybody can pretty much benefit from what I have said and what I'm going to say today. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I could do some type of justice to this subject matter. The subject is really important in the Islamic community as well as in other communities. So I'm only hoping that, inshallah ta'ala, I can do some justice to the subject. And today's Man Logic, we're talking about why men abuse their wives. I initially put beat their wives, but I brought in the language a little bit and put abuse their wives, because abuse can be in many different forms. When you say why do men beat their women, then we're restricting domestic violence to just the physical aspect. And as we will see, domestic violence has very little to do with physical beating of a person. All right? Domestic violence is not about beating a person or a man beating a woman. That is not what domestic violence is about. That's only a vehicle. That's only a tool that is used to achieve the initial goal. And the goal of domestic violence is control. Make no mistake about that. So if we said that why do men beat their wives, then that means that we're restricting domestic violence to just the physical abuse that men, do to women. When it's actually broader than that, it could be emotional, it could be financial, it could be psychological, it could be sexual, it could be spiritual, as we're going to see, inshallah ta'ala. So I brought in the language a little bit, and I said, Man Logic number 7, why men abuse their wives. Why do they abuse their wives? You guys follow me? So for those of you that are listening, in Periscope, I had to turn off the comments for you guys. So, it is what it is. Facebook Live, you guys are a little bit more mature. Alhamdulillah, the discussions with you guys is a little more mature. But Periscope, I'm sorry. I will turn the chat on after the lecture is over with, when we start the question and answer session, inshallah ta'ala. All right, so for now, for those of you who are on Periscope, you have nothing to do but just listen. And after the lecture is over, inshallah ta'ala, I'll open up the chat for question and answers. So as I pondered on this discussion, I was trying to figure out what angle to come, what angle to approach the situation. I don't want to approach it from the normal brothers beating their wives, Islam says haram, or whatever the case may be. That's cliche, and we're beyond that, man. And these discussions are more substance-filled discussions. All right, we're beyond the cliche of it being haram and Islam says you can't do that, or whatever the case may be. Well, guess what? It's being done. Women are being abused in the Islamic community as well as in many other faith-based communities, but I'm only dealing with the Islamic community. So if there are people on that are not Muslim, that have a different faith, then you're welcome. You're welcome to join. You're welcome to listen. You're welcome to benefit and to share whatever you can about this topic. As I said before, I'm no expert on the topic, right? I just went in, I did my research on it, and I'm just attaching the religious component to this to help us make sense out of what's happening in our communities. So when you think about a man who abuses his wife, let's go into the mentality. Let's go into the mind of a man who abuses his wife. Okay? Let's take a journey into the mind. Let's swim through the mind of a man who abuses his wife, whether physically, emotionally, financially, whatever. Let's look at the psychology of this individual. Before, we go into that, let me go back a little bit, right, to the history of this. All right. And life is paradoxical in that you can only live it forward, but you can only understand it backwards. So as we live life forward, we can only understand it backwards. So we got to go back in order to understand how we got to this point. All right. You guys following me? You guys on Facebook Live, can you hear and see? I'm not getting any response from you guys, so. Okay. All right. So we got to go back in order to go forward. So since the beginning of our creation as human beings, mankind, as well as jinn, these are another form of creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created before the human being. And the jinn is the species from which Shaitan emerged. And Shaitan his original name was Iblis. All right. So from the beginning of time, from the very beginning of time, men and jinn have always had an inclination towards divine qualities. All right. The divine higher qualities. All right. And the thought of being in total control is, for a human being, is exhilarating. Like when you're in control of something, right? You think all the way back to when we were children, right? And mom left or dad left and somebody wanted to be in charge, right? It was probably the oldest child. I'm in charge, right? Because there's just something about control and power that is exhilarating to the human being, right? When you go into corporate America, you got, 100 different people working for the same company, all vying with one another for the same position. And it's a real cutthroat world because people will dry snitch on people. People will just outwardly snitch on people, all to get to that top position so that they can be in control, right? And then when the person who was an entry level along with you finally reaches a supervisor position, look at how they change. Look at the type of person that they become when they have power. All right. Power and control is exhilarating. And human beings, as well as jinn, have from the very beginning had a natural inclination towards control and power. These are divine qualities. These are qualities that only belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah has given a select few from amongst his creation in the world, that position. I mean, even amongst animals, right? Even in the animal world, you always have that one animal that is vying with the rest of the animals to be the king of the jungle, right? It exists even amongst animals, but amongst human beings, and that's instinct, right? That is instinct for animals. For human beings, it is intellectual. It is a conscious decision to be in control. All right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen to this ayah. Allah says in surah number 7, ayah number 6, surah A'raf, surah number 7, ayah 6. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is the one, God is the one who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. And then, different ayah. He said that He is the one who created the heavens and the earth, fi sittati ayyam, in 6 days. وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ. And his throne was above water at that time. His throne was above water. And He did this to test you to see which one of you are best in deeds. His throne was where? Where was Allah's throne? Above water. Right? Pay attention. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, كَانَ اللَّهُ قَبْلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَكَانَ عَرْشُهُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists before anything exists, and His throne was above water. Where was His throne? Above water. Okay, pay attention. What is the concept that I'm trying to draw home here? What is the concept here? And that is that human being as well as jinn have always had, from the very beginning of their creation, a natural inclination towards power. Power and control and divine qualities. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed before anything else existed, and his throne was above water. There's an ayat I gave you from the Quran, surah number 7, ayah 6, and there's an authentic hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I gave you. Okay? His throne was above water. Now watch this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also said, "Inna Iblis yad'a arshahu 'ala al-ma', thumma yab'athu sarayahu fa'adnahum minhu manzilatan a'zamuhum fitna." Rawahu Muslim. In Sahih Muslim, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that Iblis, Shaitan, yad'a arshahu 'ala al-ma', he put his throne over water. You follow me? That Shaitan puts his throne over water. And then he dispatches his army, his jinn, his devils. He dispatches his army, and the closest of his army to him are the ones that create the most fitna, the most trial and tribulation amongst mankind. Where was Allah's throne? Above water. Where did Shaitan put his throne? Above water. Why did Shaitan put his throne above water? Because Shaitan is trying to imitate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because to imitate power, right, gives you power. To imitate power gives you power. You understand? It makes you feel like you are in the position of power, right? You always got that one coworker that acts like they're your supervisor, and you're like, "Yo, dude, you are an entry-level worker just like me. Stop acting like the supervisor. You're not the supervisor," right? You always have that one person, right? Right? So Shaitan puts his throne over water, trying to imitate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Shaitan dispatches his shayateen, his jinn, his devils out into the world, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dispatches the angels out into the world. That's as it relates to the jinn, the devils, right? All right, now let's look at the human being. How did Shaitan manage to tempt Adam, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Adam not to eat from the tree. وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ هَذِهِ الْجَنَّةِ وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ هَذِهِ الْجَنَّةِ. And we said to Adam, live in this paradise. وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ. And don't come close to this tree. Right? Clear directive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Live in Jannah, you and your wife, free to eat anything. Do not touch this tree. Right? How did Shaitan tempt Adam to eat from the tree? What was the one thing that Shaitan was able to make Adam ignore a clear directive from God, a clear directive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is man's universal vulnerability. This is man's Achilles heel, right? Man, not woman, man. This is man Achilles heel right here. What is man's weak point, our vulnerability? Every man, and I really have doubts about you as a man if you don't really seek this, but every man is seeking power. Every man is seeking power, position, authority. Because you couldn't be a man without authority. No, not lust. That's not man's greatest weakness. Women is not man's greatest weakness. Power. 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 Authority. Every man in the world is looking to position himself at some point in his life to be in control. Because in order for you to be a man, to be classified as a man, you have to have some control, right? You have to have some control, some type of authority, even if it's only over your own affairs. Which is why if a man is incarcerated, Islamically, if a man is incarcerated, put in prison right? His wilaya, his authority over his own daughter is taken from him and given to the next person in line, the uncle, the grandfather, whatever, because he doesn't have authority over himself. So how could he have authority over somebody else? It makes you less than a man. Power. Understand? Power, authority. That's our Achilles heel. And sometimes men seek that through women, right? You look at a pimp. He has all of these women that he's in control of, and it makes, and pimps are really punks, to be honest with you. When you look at a pimp, he's usually very skinny, very, dope fiendish, the images that we see of pimps, right? Iceberg Slim, if anybody is familiar with that book, right? But the fact that they control women gives them this sense of authority and power. So power is not just about being big and strong or whatever. It's about having control over someone. All right. So pay attention as I'm flowing through this. So Shaitan was able to get Adam to ignore a clear directive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a single whisper, one single whisper, that was able to convince him that he would be God-like. Right? He would be immortal. God-like quality. Someone come to you and say, hey, listen, you can live forever, just like God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَوَسْوَسَ إِلَيْهِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And Shaitan whispered to Adam, قَالَ يَا آدَمُ هَلْ أَدُلَّكَ عَلَى شَجْرَةِ الْخُلْدِ وَمُلْكٍ لَا يَبْلَى. Shaitan said, O Adam, can I not direct you to a tree that will give you everlasting life? Everlasting life. And a dominion that will never diminish. I will give you mulk. I will give you dominion. Right? And this is one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. Maliki Yawmiddin, the king of the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grab the earth in his hand on the day of judgment and say, Liman al-mulku al-yawm, who is the king today? Because human beings, we love authority, we love superiority, we love, exerting, showing our power over people. We love that. We love that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask on the day of judgment, Liman al-mulku al-yawm, today who does the kingdom belong to? Lillahi al-wahid al-qahhar. And then Allah responds, Lillahi, to Allah, al-wahid, the only one, al-qahhar, the irresistible. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the question, because the kings on that day will not be allowed to speak. The king of all kings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, is only one that will speak on that day. So there's a natural propensity towards a more divine disposition as human beings, which is why the Islamic injunction to be humble is so greatly emphasized in the Quran and the Sunnah. All throughout the Quran and the Sunnah. The whole story with Adam and Khidr is about humility. The whole story of Yusuf, right? And all of the trials that he went through, to arrive at a position to be the king of Egypt. All of that was about humility. He went through a humbling process, because usually people become great later on in life after they've had some humbling experiences. Any person that you meet in life that is successful has, if you listen to their story, they had a humbling experience, because that's what humility does to you. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man tawadha'a lillah, rafa'ahu Allah ta'ala." Whoever humbles himself before God, humbles himself before Allah, Allah will raise him in degrees. That's usually how it works. So anytime you come across people who are very successful people, right? You look at the biographies of some great actors and singers, musicians, or whatever the case, you'll find that they came from some very humbling circumstances. Because that's usually the process for greatness, right? Because humility is the fertilizer for your heart. It allows you to embrace your position of stardom and your position of authority with humility. So you go through this humbling process, all right? So you find in Islam that, the emphasis, great emphasis is placed on humility because of that human inclination towards arrogance and pride and power and, authority, right? And as it relates to women, so now that we got that out the way, I just wanted to take you, to our origin as men. All right, men naturally want to be in control. And then you have some cuckolds, some, the youth, as they're called in Arabic. The youth is someone the Prophet ﷺ said, La yadkhulul jannah the youth, that the youth will not enter into Jannah. And the youth is a cuckold. This is the type of man who has no authority in his household, has no authority over his woman, has no power. His woman walks over top of him, right? His woman does whatever she wants to, talks to him any type of way she wants to, steps all over him. He has no authority, no position, no nothing. And as a result of that, this type of man is even punished, according to Islamic tradition. This type of man is punished on the day of judgment in front of God. Because man's natural position is to be the patriarch, is to be in a position of authority. And any man that does not, any man that does not seek to be an authority or not seek to be in control, even if it's over his own affairs, that according to Islamic tradition, then this is less than a man. This is less than a man. So you think about that in terms of men who keep going back and forth to jail. You keep going back and forth to jail. You don't want authority over your own life. You don't want power and control over your own life. You keep going back and forth to jail, and then you got all of these sisters flocking to marry these dudes in jail. Why you keep marrying a guy in jail? If he can't marry his own daughter off while he in jail, why you marrying him while he in jail? Islamically, his wilaya, he is stripped of his own guardianship over his own child if he's incarcerated. And then you got a woman who seeks to go marry a man who is incarcerated. I just don't understand the logic in that. I really don't. According to Islamic tradition, he would be less than a man. Okay, so moving on, the Prophet ﷺ, as it relates to women. So now when you take this man who spends his entire life, navigating through the challenges that come to him in his life to position himself to be in a position of authority, whether over his life, over the life of his children, over the life of whatever's going on in his, in his circle, right? So that's his natural disposition. And sisters need to understand that, because when we go into marriage Islamically, in marriage Islamically, Islam is going to give you a role. You play a role when you marry into, when you go into marriage in Islam. I can't speak for any other religion, all right? Because some religions allow the woman to be the man and the man to be the woman. Some, religions allow, the man to be the woman and the woman to be the woman. And some religions allow for the man to be the man and the woman to be the man. But in Islam, the man is the man and the woman is the woman. You are given roles when you marry in Islam. So whatever your role was, you was an independent woman, whatever you were before once you step into the realm of marriage, you are in a totally different environment. You're in a different environment and you have to play a role. Right? You play a role. You play a role. All right? So as it relates to men in their relationship with women, it is very easy for us as men to lose sight of the fact that women are not your property. You don't own them. You don't have control over them. Right? You don't control them. So in everything that we try to control in our lives, and this is where a lot of our frustration as human beings come in, is because we don't have things slip through our fingers. We don't have control over them. Right? But when we have a woman under our auspices, we have a woman under our authority, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that these women are God's servants, not our servants. In your pursuit of authority, complete superiority, in your pursuit of that as a man, it's very easy for us to lose sight of the fact that when we marry women, that although under our auspices, they do not belong to us. They are the servants of Allah, not our servants. You follow me? They're not our servants. Okay? Marriage in Islam has allocated for both husband and wife their roles, but sometimes we are, and the woman, unfortunately, this is where a lot of women's frustration comes in, because as a woman, she was by herself, she was independent. right? She was independent. She had control over all of her affairs. And then she marries into Islam and she's put into this role, which is, untraditional for her. She's been single. She's been handling all of her affairs by herself. And then she gets married to a man who Islam says that he's now the authority. But when the woman looks at this man, he's not the authority. So the woman is frustrated because she's like, why should I give this guy, why should I, place this guy as an authority over me? And he doesn't deserve to be an authority over me. He doesn't even deserve it. So this is where a lot of Muslim women frustration come from, because it's like, I was good by myself. I was managing my life, managing my affairs. And then, okay, I go into the whole marriage thing and I'm cool with that. Let's get married. But then Islam puts me into this role, this more subservient role, which a woman, I don't think that she would mind having that role if she was married to a real man. If she was married to a real man, a woman automatically finds her place in the relationship when she's married to a real man. Without a doubt. Facts. Facts. A woman will naturally find her place. Initially, at the very beginning of the relationship, you're going to bump heads. Because she's been so used to managing her own affairs. And then, you got a man that comes in and is like, nah, babe, I got that. I'm going to handle that. No, let me handle that. Let me take care of that. And she's like, all right, well, she steps back and she sees that he handled it. She's like, oh, okay, I got a real dude here. I got a real dude here. All right, okay, cool. Handle that. A woman she will naturally find her place. Naturally. You don't have to control her and put her in her place by force. She's naturally domesticated. You guys have been playing with dolls and doll babies and houses. You've been playing house since y'all could talk and walk. You've been domesticated from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, being domesticated is part of your natural makeup, your natural disposition. It's a predisposition that you're born with. As Allah says in the Quran, أَوَمَنْ يُنَشَّأُ فِي الْحِلْيَةِ وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ. Can a woman who was raised in trinkets, this is a woman. This is a woman who was raised with, trinkets. We're buying them barrettes. We're getting their ears pierced at 6 months. Raised in trinkets. وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ. And even in a heated argument, she can barely articulate herself. Are you going to make this creature equal to God? As they used to say that the angels were the daughters of God, right? This was Arab, culture, Arab tradition, pre-Islamic Arab tradition, that they said the angels were the daughters of God. And Allah saying that, are you going to, liken God to this type of creature? So there's a predisposition. There's a predisposition there. And a woman will normally find her place, wherever that place is. I'm not saying that place has to be subservient. I'm saying that when a woman is married to a real man, she will find her place, wherever that place is. Wherever that place is. So men don't have to force their women. There's a certain type of man who feels that he has to use force to push his wife into a particular role, subservient role. And we'll get into that. All right. And understand something. The Prophet ﷺ highlighted the vulnerability of women. Brothers, I want you to listen to this closely, man. Sisters, I want you to listen to this very closely, because some of you think you're ready for marriage. But the reality is that you're not ready for marriage. If you're not ready to select someone that you are willing to relinquish this dualism that you are living, you're a single mother, right? If you're a single mother, then you have children, so you're playing the role of the mother and the father. So there is a duality there. You're playing the role of the mother and the father. And if you play any masculine role, you're going to take on masculine energy. Make no mistake about that. If you try to imitate a man, you are automatically going to adopt masculine energy. And this is why women who have masculine energy, this is why you can't find a man. You can't find a man because there's no good brothers out here. That's bull crap. There's tons of good brothers out here. You can't find a man because you have adapted masculine energy. And as a result of that, anytime you come into close vicinity with a real man, he's going to sense that masculine energy, and it's a turnoff to him. Understand, facts. Wallahi, I kid you not. Yes, a lot of black women have that. They have masculine energy. And that's by design, because you didn't start off like that. That's by design. Make no mistake about it. Men can, when a man walks into the room, he can take one look around the entire room. If he's a real man and he's, sensitive to his energy, a man can walk in a room and he can point out the 2 or 3 men that would be a problem for him. The rest he ain't even worried about. It's not a problem. They don't even matter, right? They don't even matter. A man can walk in a room and he can automatically spot who's going to be his rival. His rival, automatically. Why? Because men can read the energy of other men, which is why having a wali is very important. Men can read the energy of other men. So if men can read the other energy of other men, then when a woman adopts masculine energy because she's playing this masculine role, right? Don't you think that men can pick up on that too? When a man is close to a woman, I can spot it, even me myself, and I'm very keen with the energy that is around me. I can spot it immediately. Immediately. I can walk into a room, and I've been into rooms, and I can automatically spot which woman is going to be my problem. And 9 times out of 10, those women have embraced masculine energy. Feminists, whatever you want to call them. I can almost spot them as soon as I walk in the room. I'm one of them people that I'm very perceptive about the energy that's around me. I can walk into a room and there's women in the room and I can point out the 1 or 2 women, because there's only 1 or 2 of them, that's going to be my problem. Why? Because they carry with them a masculine energy. The rest of the women in the room, a man is not threatened by a woman. That's not normal that a man is threatened. The energy of a woman threatens the energy of a man. That's not normal. But when a man walks into a room and he feels threatened by the energy of a certain woman, then you know that woman is carrying with them a dominant energy, right? Men's plight is to be dominant. That's our nature, to be dominant. That's our nature. It's not woman's nature to be dominant. That's not your nature. That's not your nature to be dominant. All right? So the Prophet ﷺ highlighted the vulnerability of women underneath the auspices of a man in his farewell khutbah. In the last khutbah, right? In the last khutbah the Prophet ﷺ ever gave, he highlighted the vulnerability of women in marriage. He said, ittaqullaha fin nisa, fear Allah concerning your women. فَإِنَّهُنَّ عَوَانٌ عِنْدَكُمْ, for indeed these women are like captives under your authority. That is the role of a woman in an Islamic marriage. That is the role of a woman in relation to her husband. She is almost like a captive. Awanun is the plural of ani, and ani al-asir, a captive. And this is because the woman is murtabita bi khidmati man huwa tahta yadihi. That the woman is connected to the service that she owes to the man that is over her, the husband. She is connected to her service that she has to do to her husband. His rights even take precedence over some of the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did you know that? The right of the husband, Islamically, the right of the husband that is wajib, that is obligatory, takes precedence over the right of Allah, which is supererogatory, sunnah. Meaning, if a woman is fasting, a supererogatory fast, right? Not obligatory, Monday, Thursday, whatever, she's fasting. And a man comes home for lunch and he wants to be intimate with his wife. And he calls her to the bed, she has to break her fast. Because the fast is supererogatory, satisfying her husband is obligatory. You understand? This is as it relates to his right in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the woman, the Prophet ﷺ said, fear Allah concerning your women. فَإِنَّهُنَّ عَوَانٌ عِنْدَكُمْ, because they, in their roles of being married, are like captives. Right? And she has to ask him before she fasts. Absolutely. She has to ask his permission to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in certain regards. Absolutely. To fast, she has to ask his permission. Absolutely. So, And this is why some of the scholars, they used to say, أن النكاح نوع من أنواع الرق. النكاح رق فلينظر أحدكم من يرقي or يرق كريمته. That marriage is a type of servitude. Marriage is a type of servitude, so let every one of you look towards who you are going to place your daughter under their authority. Because marriage is a type of servitude. It is. It's a subservient role that the woman is put into, right? And the man is subservient too, but to God. Not necessarily to his woman, but to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is why the Quran, when it speaks about the relationships between husband and wife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually ends the verse when he's talking about man and woman and rights and things like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually will end the verse with an attribute that denotes his authority and superiority over the man, right? Just as the man believes that his authority is over the woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah number 2, ayah 228. Listen to this ayah, because this ayah is going to answer some questions for us later on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَّهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah says that the women have certain rights that are for them, similar to the rights that are against them. Meaning women have the same rights that men have in the relationship, in a marriage. The women have the same rights that the men have over them. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. And the man has a degree of authority over her because he has a degree of responsibility over her. And then Allah ends the verse, وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah is mighty and wise. Showing the man that although he gave the man a degree of authority over the woman, ultimately he is the authority. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa al-aziz. Allah is the ultimate authority over the man. So even though the man has authority over the woman to some degree, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate authority. You follow me? The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله ولكن بيوتهن خير لهن. He said, do not prevent the female servants of Allah from attending the houses of Allah, but their homes are better for them. Listen how the Prophet ﷺ structured his statement. He said, don't prevent the female servants of Allah. He didn't say, don't prevent your wives. Why? Why did the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't say, don't prevent your wives. He said, don't prevent the female servants of Allah from attending the houses of Allah, but their homes are better for them. Why did he structure his statement like that? He could have just said, don't prevent your wives from attending the masjids. Why did he structure his statement like that? No, because a woman is the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the servant of her husband. He said, لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله. Don't prevent the female servants of Allah. Meaning, don't look at them as your wives. Look at them as Allah's servants first. Although you have authority over them. He's saying, do not prevent them. You, the authority, don't prevent your wives from attending the houses. Don't prevent your female servants of Allah. They are your wives, but he addressed them as the servants of Allah because they belong to Allah, not to you. Showing you that their real authority is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned in another hadith, he said, La tadribu ima Allah. Do not hit the female servants of Allah. He didn't say don't hit your wives. He said don't hit the female servants of Allah. Bringing the reality back home that although you are their husband and you have the authority over them, ultimately they belong to Allah. They don't belong to you. They are Allah's servants. So for the men who are in a habit of, exerting this control and authority and superiority over their wives, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate authority. You are not. Your authority is given to you on loan by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your authority has limits as a husband. Your authority, your superiority, your control has limits. You don't have a limitless control over the woman to do as you want and say what you want and treat her any type of way that you want to. Understand that there are consequences to that. And we're going to get into some of that. So you can look at the way that the Prophet ﷺ structured his statement. He placed a woman, although under the auspices of their husbands, right? Although under the auspices of their husbands, they're still the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ultimate authority. The ultimate authority, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a hadith collected in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. He said, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. That there is no obedience to the creation in disobedience to the Creator. All right? A woman cannot obey her husband and then at the same time obeying her husband, disobeying the real authority. That the husband's obedience is an extension of her obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not independent of it. I'll say that again. A woman's obedience to her husband is an extension of her obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in spite of it. Understand? He said there is no obedience to the creation and disobedience to the Creator. Nah, we're not dealing with the women who punch their husbands. Now, we're not dealing with that because that's a minority situation. And the Islamic ruling in the chapters of fiqh, la hukm lil ghalib, al hukm lil ghalib. That the Islamic ruling is attached to the situation that is more prevalent, not the situation that is a rarity. The rarity in Islam has no ruling. You do not give a ruling to something that is rare. You give the ruling to the thing that is that is affecting the vast majority. All right, so now let's look at domestic violence. What is domestic violence? This is something that a lot of people don't really understand. So I need you guys to pay close attention. This is not one of them situations if you're sitting in your living room, you got the TV on, turn the TV off. If you got kids around you, tell them to go in the room because this conversation is about to get real serious. Okay, domestic violence. Let's talk about it. I'm going to get into that, Shemps. Don't worry about it. We're going to get into all of that. All right. So domestic violence is when a spouse, pay attention, take notes if you can. Domestic violence is when a spouse physically, verbally, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, and mentally or psychologically abuses their partner by exerting control or power over them. I'll say it again. 7 categories. All right. Domestic violence is when a spouse physically, verbally, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, mentally, or psychologically abuses their partner by exerting control and power over them. So as you can see, domestic violence has nothing to do with it's not about the physical beating of a man beating his wife. Understand? So the 7 things that I just mentioned are just a means, the vehicle, that's it. To the end. It is a means to an end. And the end is control. Understand? If it's physical, mental, psychological, financial, sexual, spiritual, right? It's not about the physical abuse. Stop thinking, because you might be, after this is over with, I'm sure some of you going to, go back and reevaluate your situations or help some other people reevaluate their situations, because you might be in a domestically abusive situation and don't even realize it. Because you're thinking that it's only when a man put his hands on you that you're being domestically abused. No, sorry. It could even be with finances. It can even be with finances. It could be with religion. How do you use religion to oppress someone? We're going to get there. Stay with me. All right. So the 7 things that I mentioned are just a means. They're just a vehicle to get to the end goal. And the end goal is control. Power and control. Understand? 95% of the reported domestic violence cases are men abusing women. 95% of the domestic violence reported cases are men abusing women, while only 5% are women against men. So that whole argument of what about sisters who abuse their husbands, that's nadir, right? Al-hukm lil-ghalib. The Islamic ruling is attached to what is more prevalent. وَنَادِرْ لَا حُكْمْ لَهُ. And that which is a rarity has no ruling. There's no ruling because it's a rarity. It doesn't really occur. It doesn't really occur. And nadir la hukm lahu. This is a qaida, fiqhiyya. These are fiqh principles, maxioms, all right? Part of our religion. We can't just, ignore those. All right? All right, so let's get into it. Most domestic abusers have a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, bipolar syndrome that they suffer from. It's the dualism. Because they come off as the nicest people. When they're out in public, they're the nicest people. You see them with their children, you're like, wow, mashallah. But when they get home, they become a completely different person. They become a completely different person. Brothers, I want you to pay attention because I'm talking to you. I'm talking to us as brothers. We got to learn how to have some emotional stability in our lives. But we have this bipolar, manic depressive syndrome, right? Because of their public and private behaviors, right? The public and private behaviors, this dualism that they suffer from. So let me just give you, we're gonna dive a little deeper here. I want you to pay attention because a lot of the brothers that come from or are part of the Salafi, the extreme Salafi community. All right. I'm about to real talk right here. All right. They are the greatest perpetrators of this type of behavior. As a matter of fact, the Salafi community, the extreme Salafi community itself represents this type of behavior. And it trickles over into the mainstream communities because a lot of the brothers in the Salafi community are no longer looking for those sisters who are Salafi, right? Because so many of them, they filter these sisters. It's like a revolving door with a lot of the sisters in the community. Why? Because they don't expand their communities. They don't expand their community. They stay in a tight-knit circle, right? They don't go to any other masses. They don't listen to any other speakers. They don't take from nobody else. Right? All of this I don't take from him. And we rotate between these 3, 4, 5 Salafi masjids in one city. So basically it's a revolving door. So when the divorce rates are high in those communities, right? I mean, can they hate me any more than they already hate me? Is it even possible to hate me any more than you hate me? So they live in very small close-knit communities. So that means if they have, and without a doubt, the Salafi community has very high rates of divorce. So if they have high rates of, I want you guys to do the math here. If the Salafi community has high rates of divorce, which they do, right? Because there's no system in place. The men it's like a boys club. The men can kind of just do them and the women just, are just passed around. The women are just passed around and the sisters I've been a part of those communities from the very beginning of my Islam. There's nothing that you can tell me about those communities that I don't know. And I haven't experienced firsthand myself. Okay? So I'm not speaking from a place where some information I read or something somebody told me. All right? I used to be a part of these communities. I know firsthand how they function. All right? So a lot of the divorce rates are very high in those communities, right? Because of a lot of the things that we're mentioning here, this whole control and obey your husband, sister, this type of mentality. And so they have very little tolerance for women who can think for themselves, right? They have very low tolerance for women who can think outside of the box that they try to put them in. When they put you in this box, they put, all black. You got to go to this masjid. You got to take from these particular scholars, these particular students of knowledge. That's a box. They just put you in a box. And some people, that's their rightful place. They deserve to be in a box. Which is why I don't warn people against going to their communities. Because for some people, they might need to be in those communities. And they actually serve a purpose. They actually do serve an actual purpose, to believe it or not. Some people are saying, oh, warn against them. Don't send nobody up to the communities or whatever. Nah, don't warn against them, because there's some people that need to be there. Stay the hell away from the main body of the rest of the Muslims. Go and enjoy yourself. You understand what I'm saying? So some people actually need to be there. But when you have high rates of divorce amongst them and they don't expand, they get like one new shahada every month or something like that. I mean, and they have, you know, Salafis in those communities, they have a very short shelf life. They cater to a certain type of people, the people coming home from jail, people who are down and, you know, down on their luck, people who, you know, just hit rock bottom in life and just really looking for something to lift them up, pick them up. You understand what I'm saying? And then once these people get married, start having children, start having real life problems, the information that is being disseminated in the Salafi community no longer works for them. So they got to move somewhere else. So they only have like a 2 to maybe 5 year shelf life as a Salafi. And then it's like you move on, right? You move on to other things because the information that they're, I mean, like I took the Imam position in 2010 at UMM. They have been giving khutbahs and talking about me since 2009. And it's 2017. And they just recently, just 2 weeks ago, gave a khutbah about me again. It's just like you keep talking about the same thing. Like we're talking about almost 10 years. It's 2017. You've been talking about this guy, Shadid Muhammad, since 2009. You follow what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, okay, make your point and keep it moving. But people year after year after year, they're like, all right, this is not really working for me anymore. This is not really working for me anymore. And then you got to move on to somewhere else. But if they don't expand their communities, then that means that the sisters that are divorced, the high divorce rate, right? What happens to those sisters? Where are they going to get married? Because the sisters are not going outside of the Salafi community to get married. So what do? These sisters are just passed around, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's a revolving door with marriage and divorce in their communities. I'm facts. I'm telling you straight up. So let's look at the diagnostic criteria for, or diagnosis for the domestic abuser. Pay attention to this. Watch how we connect these dots. Number 1, antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder. This is the type of brother that is deceitful, lying, right? And he does everything so that he's like a moving target. He's a moving target. You can never actually put your finger on this person. Antisocial personality disorder. This person is very deceitful, lies, you know, maneuvers, do everything that they can possibly do so that you can never put your finger on it, right? All right. Yes, they are psychologically damaged. Yes, they are. All right, the second one is borderline personality disorder, BPD, all right? These are people that are unstable. They have very intense interpersonal relationships. These are the type of people who you can know them for 20 years, and then once they adopt the Salafi methodology, they'll boycott you. They'll completely cut you off. And they will develop friendships with people that they just met, over the friendships of people that they went to high school with, they went to junior high with, you know, you played video games in each other's houses. They have borderline personality disorder. Nothing stable about their personality. They can't maintain friendships. Think about the Salafi community and how many imams and students of knowledge that they have run through themselves. The same people that they prop up at one moment, they put their names on flyers, and then the next moment, they don't even mess with them anymore. They don't rock out with them like that anymore. And I mean, like, they run through students of knowledge. You know, you got a couple that, you know, the usual suspects that remain around for a while. they stay around for a little bit, right? They have their stake in that, and they're not really going anywhere. But the others, they kind of just, it's a revolving door for them as well. It's a revolving door for them, even with a lot of their leadership. Nothing stable about it. 1 minute, they're on a flyer, on a, you know, on the platform with this person, and the next minute they warning against them. That is not normal behavior. That is not normal behavior. All right. The last one is narcissistic personality disorder. This is the grandiose sense of self-importance. I'm important. Obey your husband, sister. Right? All right. So let's go back to the antisocial. Turn the arrow, please. The antisocial. So many will use Islam to isolate. Sisters, pay attention. When a brother starts to isolate you from your family, from your friends, from your community, then understand that you are being positioned to eventually be controlled. All right. So the antisocial behavior is many will use Islam to isolate the woman from her family. Will use Islam to isolate you from your family. They'll tell you your family are disbelievers, right? Your family are kuffar. You need to stay away from them. They'll tell you that your family, if they are Muslims, then they're disobedient Muslims. They're astray. Stay away from them. Your family is astray. Your family is this. I mean, this happens even with brothers and sisters. Like, they haven't attended the Eid with one another. Like, just think that I have a lot of children. So I can only imagine, like, we go to the Eid every year, twice a year together as a family. And to have these same children who grew up in my household get to the point where they're like 19, 20 years old and adopt this particular approach to Islam, and then turn around and tell me that I am a deviant and that they can't attend the Jumu'ah with their own father and their mother. I mean, like, as a parent, I would, like, I can't even say, in public for my own personal what I would do to my own kid if that was the case. But I mean, can you imagine as a parent? Can you imagine as a parent that your child grows up and tells you, oh, I can't go to Jumu'ah with you no more because the masjid that we grew up in is astray? And, it's like, you gotta be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. And that's not to say, this is the danger, because some of this stuff is actually true. It's actually true, but it's being used for the wrong reasons. And that's the danger. So antisocial behavior, they'll isolate you from your friends. They'll tell you your friends are kuffar, or your friends are, disobedient. Look at her, she don't cover. They'll come up with all these different reasons for you to start Xing off all your friends off your list. Be aware of that. Any man that comes into your life and tries to control who you hang with, to give you advice and to say, I would advise you, or I'm very uncomfortable with you. That's a husband appealing to you, appealing to your ability to use your religious lens, right? And look at the world through the lens of your religion. That's your husband appealing to you. That's not your husband superimposing on you and forcing you to see it his way and to do it his way and to accept nothing less than that. Understand? There's a difference between the two. There's a difference between a husband saying to his wife, sis, babe, she doesn't really cover, and, I don't want you, around sisters like that. And then other people tend to think that you kind of get down like that. You are, around the people that you are associated with, that you do share in some of that. So I would advise you, this is just my advice, I would advise you that, if you guys go out, then you try to find an alternative, because you don't want to separate them. That, when you guys go out, why don't you just ask her to put on an overgarment? Why don't you just, advise her, or things like that? You're trying to, appeal to your wife's ability to use her religion, right? And not to just accept the situation as it is. This opposed to, I don't want you hanging out with her no more. You can't hang out with her no more. Why? That's my friend. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, be with those who are truthful. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, here. So you're going to go against the Quran and the Sunnah? You're going to go against the Quran and the Sunnah? Right? These are how the arguments go. Because we're going to use Islam to abuse you. Not use Islam to build you, to empower you, to strengthen you. We're going to use Islam to put you in a box and isolate you from your friends, isolate you from your family, all right? Isolate you from your masjid. You've been attending this masjid all your life. He married you because of some good qualities that you have, that you developed from going to this masjid. And then he turns around and then he removes you from that masjid. He uproots you from this particular masjid and takes you to a completely different place that you don't have any knowledge about, introducing you to all of these sisters. And I mean, it's crazy. Crazy. All right. Or in some cases, the brother may tell you he don't want you hanging with this particular sister because he don't like her husband. I've had that happen to me. It's funny. It's like almost like we're in preschool. Like, this is like pre-K, right? So you tell your wife not to speak to my wife anymore because you don't like me or because you believe I'm a deviant. And you've never actually come to me and had a conversation about anything. You just adopted whatever, you opened your brain and whatever they dumped inside of there, you took that. And then you tell your wife not to talk to my wife anymore, and they grew up together. They lived on the same street. They grew up together. They went to high school together. And now all of a sudden, because you have a problem with me, you don't want your wife to give this wife. Basically, this is what. No, listen. This is crazy. So the danger is that some of this stuff could be legitimate Islamically. It could be legitimate. But you don't know the person's angle. You don't know what their angle is. And their angle, if the person is a domestic abuser, their angle is to isolate you, put you on an island all by yourself. So when the abuse starts, you have no one to defend you. You have no one to complain to. You have no one, right? Because we attach shame with marital problems. That's dangerous. So I don't want to go to the imam and tell the imam about the marital problems I'm having because I don't want to expose my husband, but he's abusing you. Right. So the danger is that some of this stuff might be legitimate Islamically. You might need to be told not to pray at this masjid. You might need to be told don't hang with this particular person. Right? Those things might be legitimate. But you don't know what the person's angle is, and that's the danger when we use truth, to justify falsehood. As the Khawarij, they used to bust in the masjid while Ali was giving the khutbah, right? During the time of Khalifa Ali, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He's on the minbar giving the khutbah on Jumu'ah. And the Khawarij, this deviant group, would walk into the masjid, bust into the masjid, because they had no respect for Islam. They had no respect for the Muslims. Similar to these individuals, right? They bust into the masjid while Ali is giving the khutbah, and they shout at the top of their lungs, La hukma illa lillah, la hukma illa lillah. There's no judge except Allah's judgment. There's no judge except Allah's judgment. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said a word that was so profound. He said, Kalimatul haq urida biha batil. This is a true statement that there's no judge except Allah. God is the only judge, but they only desire by that statement falsehood. They only desire by a falsehood. So they're using truth to justify falsehood. And that's a dangerous individual. And when a person has a disease in their hearts, that's exactly what they'll do. They'll sit in the masjid, they'll sit at lectures, and they'll absorb all of these tidbits of information, and they'll manipulate that and co-opt the religion for their own personal, right? For their own personal. Make no mistake about that. All right. Narcissistic personality disorder, using Islamic texts that places his needs over the needs of his wife. You interpret the texts that give the man his rights. You interpret those texts as making your rights more important than the rights of the woman. Please tell me in Islam, even though the man has a degree of haqq over his wife, the rights of the woman in comparison to the rights over the man Islamically. Like, are you serious? You're going to use Islamic texts to make your rights as the husband more important than the rights of the woman. And this is a classic case of, you get into an argument, sister corners you, and then you say, just obey your husband. I'm not going into all of that. Obey your husband, sister. Right? Because now I can shut the argument down using obey your husband. So I don't have to deal with it, right? Sister and husband get into an argument over niqab. He wants you to wear niqab. You say, I don't see niqab to be obligatory. I've studied the text. I've studied the issues myself. And I don't see the niqab to be obligatory. And he says, well, I'm not going into all of that with you. Just obey your husband. Put the niqab on. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we're using. So why are women learning Islam if when we get into an argument, if they get into an argument with us in the home, the first thing that we do is shut them down by saying, just obey your husband? Then what is the woman learning for? If the woman in Islam is not able to learn her deen, and then that learning be respected in the home, amongst her husband and amongst other family members, then why is she learning Islam? Why are we having female scholars if we could just throw obey your husband? If you could just throw obey your husband, you pull out the obey your husband card, basically. Obey your husband, then why is the woman learning? Because every time she approaches you with something that you disagree with, you shut it down by saying, oh, but yes, it is very dismissive. Very dismissive. Because it means what you're saying doesn't matter. My right of being obeyed supersedes your right to be heard. All right? I'll say that again. My right as a husband to be obeyed supersedes your right to be heard as a woman, as a wife in the marriage. You're already in a role, right? You're already as a wife in a role. You're already in this little box where you got to be obedient to this man. And you got to give this man his rights. You're already in a box. And then he puts you in an even further box because now you don't even have a voice even in your own box. Like she's a child, absolutely. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gave virtue to the way a man caters to his wife, not the way that a man caters to himself. The Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. The best of you are those that are best to their wives, and I am the best of you to my wives. I am the best of you to my wives. Virtue in Islam is given to the way that a man treats his family. The Prophet ﷺ didn't say the best of men is the man who go out, fight jihad, and die in the cause of Allah. He said the best of men is those who are best to their families, the best to their wives. And I am the best of you to my wives. I treat my wives better than any of you men treat your wives. Understand? The rights of the wife supersede the rights of the man. So, now let's talk about, can a man force his wife to have sexual relations with him? Can a man force his wife to have sexual relations with him? Let's deal with this. Because sometimes a woman doesn't want to be, like, as we said before, that men, our sexuality is not attached to our emotions. We could be mad, upset, or whatever, but we'll never deny sex. Women, on the other hand, your sexuality is connected to your emotions. If you're not in the mood emotionally, you don't want to have sex. If there was a death in the family, like you don't want, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to have sex. A man could just come from a janazah and say, okay, can we go home real quick and have sex? Because our emotions is not connected to our sexuality, but a woman's is. And Islam does recognize that. So let's just say husband shouts at his wife, yells at his wife, beats his wife, or gets, caught cheating on his wife, or whatever the case may be. Does a wife have to unequivocally, unrestrictedly obey her husband when it comes to sexual relations? Does a woman, if a man, because here's another dismissive hadith that we'll use. We'll use another hadith to dismiss the woman's emotions, right? The Prophet ﷺ, authentic hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا دَعَى الرَّجُلُ إِمْرَأَتَهُ إِلَى فِرَاشِهِ فَأَبَتْ غَضْبَانًا فَبَاتَتْ غَضْبَانًا عَلَيْهَا لَعْنَتْهَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ حَتَّى تُصْبِحْ. Listen to this very closely. Pay attention, because we don't need to have this discussion no more. I want you to be upon clarity, right? I want you to be upon clarity when this discussion is over with. All right? We don't ever have to speculate anymore. Pay attention. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that if a man calls his wife to the bed, meaning to have sexual relations with him, and she refuses. These are general terms. He calls his wife to the bed. She refuses. And then he goes to sleep angry with her. Then the angels will curse her until the morning. That's the hadith. So a man could shout at his wife, yell at her, demean her, degrade her, belittle her, beat her, do whatever he want to do to her, and then he can still call her to the bed and she still has to obey him. Is that what Islam is saying? Is that what the Prophet ﷺ is saying here? What I'm asking is this hadith unrestricted? Is this hadith unrestricted? Meaning, no matter what the case is, if a man calls his wife to the bed, she has to obey him. Is that unrestricted? No. It's not unrestricted. It is restricted. Because if a man calls his wife to the bed to do something haram, right? To have sex with her in her anal is haram. So if a man is calling his wife to the bed to have sex with her in her anal, she has a right to deny him. If a man is calling his wife to the bed to have sex with her, all right, while she is on her menstrual, right? She is experiencing her menstrual cycle, and he calls her to the bed. Does she have to obey him? No. So the hadith is restricted. Don't say this is unrestricted. If any time a man calls his wife to the bed, she has to respond. La wallahi. No. There are times we have to use this text in conjunction with other texts. All right? This is not by itself. All right? I just gave you 2 instances where if a man called his wife to the bed to be intimate with her, she is allowed to deny him. All right? If he wants to have sex with her in a manner that is haram. No. Okay. Now let's go back. Okay, so I gave you 2 situations. What about if the man, is caught cheating? She caught him cheating, or she knows that he was with another woman, or whatever the case may be. Right? And he calls her to the bed. What if the man beat her and then tells her, I want to have sex with you? Can he do that as well? What if a man was promised his wife that he would take care of certain things when he married her? What if the man promised the wife that he would take care of certain things when he married her, and those things are not taken care of, and now she's affected emotionally? She cannot be intimate with him. She does not have those feelings for him. Can she deny him? Yes. Did I not quote to you an ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the woman has the same rights as the man? The woman has the same rights as the man. So if a woman stipulated in the marriage that the man take care of certain things, and that man did not fulfill those obligations, and in turn has affected that woman in a way where she cannot be intimate with him. Maybe the mahar, maybe whatever stipulation she put in the marriage contract. Maybe she put in the marriage contract that, I don't want to be in polygyny. I don't want to be a second wife. She can't tell him he can't take another wife, but what she can say is, I don't want to be in polygyny. And then he goes and secretly marries another woman. And then he comes home and then he says, I want to be intimate with you. Does she have a right to deny him? Allah says, and the women have similar rights to the rights of the men over them. They have the same rights. Understand. Don't let these brothers manipulate you. Don't let these brothers play with the religion and manipulate you. Using the hadith that if the man calls a woman to the bed and she doesn't respond. If she doesn't respond because of matters that are not legitimate. Meaning if a woman just refuses to give him sexual relations. She just refuses for her own personal reasons. Has no legitimacy Islamically. But if she has an Islamic legitimate reason to deny him, yes, she can deny him. All right? The scholars, they say, إِذَا كَانَ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ كَأَنَّ زَوْجٍ نَاشِزًا. There's something in Islam called nushuz. Does anyone know what this means? Does anyone know what the word nushuz means? Nushuz means marital discord. Marital discord. And marital discord can be on the part of the husband, and it could be on the part of the wife. So if the husband is creating nushuz, the husband is creating marital discord. He's not giving her rights, meaning he's not paying any of the bills. He's lying to her. He's cheating on her, right? And he calls her to the bed. Does she have to respond? No, she does not have to respond. If he is engaging in matters that is haram, he's getting high, and he calls her to the bed, does she have to respond? No, she does not have to respond. Because now he is considered nashiz. He's considered creating marital discord. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in surah number 4, ayat 58, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَةِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Allah commands you to return the trust to their rightful people. return the trust to their rightful people. So if you have a right that you owe to your wife, then you have to give her her haq first. You cannot demand your haq before you give this woman her haq. La wallahi, Islam does never condone that. When does Islam ever condone that? Go through the books of fiqh, go through the books of hadith, and tell me, when does Islam ever condone that? How you asking for your haq and you haven't given the woman her haq? How? You asking for your haq and you not giving the woman her haq. You're not giving the woman her right. How? Allah says that indeed Allah commands you to return the trust to their rightful people. If this woman has a right over you, you give her her right. You can't demand that she have sexual relations with you and you denying her her haq. You're not paying any of the bills. You're going out marrying second wives and you can't afford it. You ain't taking care of business in your first house. And then you come home talking about it's your right to have sexual relations. It's not your right. You forfeited that right. You forfeited that right, brother. Sorry. It's called nushuz. You forfeited that right. And Allah says, and give the rights back to the people that they are due to. Your wife has a haq over you. You got to give her her haq before you can demand your haq. Are you kidding me? So if the man is oppressing her, if the man is engaging in matters that are haram, then she has a right to deny him sexual relations and should not be threatened. Should not be threatened with the hadith that if she refuses, then the angels are going to curse her into the morning. No, the angels might actually make dua for her until the morning. The angels might be making dua for her until the morning. You was just out with another woman that she never even knew about, and then you come home talking about, can we have sexual relations? No. And then you're going to use the hadith to say, oh, the angels are going to curse her. Nah, the angels might be making dua for her into the morning. There's no obedience to the creation and disobedience to the creator. Nah. But what is better for her, instead of getting into this issue, is for her to just leave the situation completely instead of just denying him this. Just leave the situation completely. As Fatima bint Qais, she went to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, Ya Rasulullah, inni la u'ibu thabit fi dinihi wa la fi khuluqihi, lakinni la utiquhu bughdan. She said, O Messenger of Allah, I don't have any problem with Thabit as it relates to his character, as it relates to his deen, but I cannot stomach him. I can't stomach him. La utiquhu bughdan. I hate to look at him. And the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? He said, can you give him back what he gave you as a dowry? She said, I can give him back what he gave me as a dowry, waziyada, and more. I just want out of this situation. The Prophet ﷺ went to Thabit and told him to accept your garden back and to release her from this marriage. Understand? So the better thing, as she said, I couldn't stand being in this marriage with him. I can't even look at him. She mentioned in another narration that when I see him in a crowd of men, I have no desire. I am ashamed. I am embarrassed to call this person my husband. That's how much she disliked him. And she wanted out. So the better thing is that if you can't, you know what I'm saying? If you can't be in the situation with this person, don't play the game where I'm not going to have sexual relations with you. I'm not going to, I'm not playing that game with you, man. I'm out. I'm not sitting here playing this, this semantics, my right, you're right. I'm not getting into all of that stuff. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. All right? So understand that. So, a man cannot use the hadith that if a man calls his wife to the bed that she has to obey. Under any circumstance, she has to obey. Or is that conditional? Is that conditional? Are there some circumstances that she might be excused for in denying him? Or is that just absolute emphatic? It's not emphatic. Stop letting ignorant brothers teach you your religion. Boy ain't sat in a class day in his life. Boy ain't sat in a class day in his life, man. You go sit in a lecture with your coffee and you're sitting in the back kicking it and, it becomes a boys club. You're just hanging out and whatever tidbits of information you manage to gather from that gathering, and you go and you manipulate it and whatever the case may be. And then when a woman goes back and does research, you find out that this dude don't even know what the hell he's talking about. You don't even know what you're talking about, dude. It might not even, Gareth, it might not even be tahrif. It ain't even distortion of the text. This is a reinterpretation of the text. They got their own religion going, man. How is this promoting destruction of households? Households are already destroyed, brother. What are you talking about? Where have you been? What rock are you climbing from underneath? Households are already dysfunctional from top to bottom. Hence the fact I'm sitting here talking about it. Households are already destroyed. You speaking of as if you're speaking about the destruction of, man, please miss me with that. The only reason why I'm even giving this lecture is because the households are already destroyed. What are you talking about? Where have you been? Nah, we can't sit around waiting for the masses to clean it up. That's not gonna happen. Nah, this is a venti. It's a little bit more left in there. So the better thing to do is to just leave the situation completely and not get into the whole, well, I don't want to be intimate with you. She said, right? Usman must be from Sudan. I don't know. Like, maybe he just popped out of nowhere, you know. Like, understand something, man. If you don't have a pulse on, you know, the social climate and what's going on, man, please stay in your lane, man. You know, please stay in your lane, man. I'm aware. I got a pulse on this. My finger been on the pulse from day one, man. All right. So what is better? As Fatima bint Qais, she exited the situation altogether. She didn't stay and say, sister sent me an email this morning talking about the same thing. Like, if you're not attracted to someone and you can't stand being around this person, you got to be honest with yourself. This ain't working for me. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just say, I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna try to get his brother his rights. No, she said, la utiquhu bughdan. I can't stand to look at him. I can't stand to look at him. I want out of this situation. All right, and that's the better thing to do. But the Prophet ﷺ, he explained that sexual relations and intimacy should not be without compassion of the hearts and mercy, right? Look at the verses that deal with sexual relations. How a man yell and shout and scream and, do all of these things to his wife and then turn around and say, let's be, let's be intimate. How are we going to be intimate? All of the components that would create an intimate situation are not even here. Look at all of the ayats in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about sexual relations. All of those ayats deal with compassion and mercy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even tells the man to qaddimu li anfusikum, like to do some foreplay, even before you actually engage in the act of sexual relations, right? There has to be intimacy of the hearts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes this. But listen to this hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. Listen to this hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يَعْمِدُ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَجْلِدْ إِمْرَأَتُهُ جِلْدَ الْعَبْدِ فَلَعَلَّهُ يُضَاجِعُهَا مِنْ آخِرِ يَوْمِهَا وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ قَالَ جِلْدَ الْفَحْلِ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, listen to this. This speaks to my point even further. The Prophet ﷺ said, perhaps one of you goes to his wife and beats her like an owner would beat his slave. And another narration, he said, like a man would beat his ba'ir, would beat his camel. Right? One of you goes to your wife and you beat your wife like an owner beats his slave, or like a man beats his camel. He said, and then perhaps you want to go and be intimate with her at the end of the day. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, how? How could you do that? Listen to what Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said. Let me give you some hardcore Salafi information. All right? Because people always say, well, who said that? What scholar said that? Like, as if, the scholar validates it. If the Prophet ﷺ said it, that's sufficient. Scholar is just the icing on the cake. But we don't want to say, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? We said, what Sheikh said that. That's how conditioned we have been. That is how conditioned we are. What scholar said that? What scholar preceded him in that? I don't need a scholar to precede me in something if the Prophet ﷺ already preceded me in it. You kidding me? What scholar preceded me in that? The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said it. What are you talking about? What scholar preceded in him in that? And we buy into this stuff. You know, well, no scholar said that, so that must be coming from himself. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. All right, so listen to what Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said. He said in his explanation of this hadith, he said, وَلَا يُلِيكُ بِحَالٍ مِنَ الْأَحْوَالِ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ الْإِنسَانِ بَيْنَ النَّقِيضَيْنِ يَضْرِبُ الْمَرْأَةِ وَضَرَبَ الْفَحَلِ ثُمَّ يُضَاجِعُهَا فِي آخِرِ الْيَوْمِ. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said that it is not appropriate. It is not appropriate in any circumstance. بحال من الأحوال. It is not. لا يليق. He didn't say it's not permissible. He said it's not even fathomable under any circumstance. It's not even fathomable. He didn't say it's not permissible because this is something that you can't even fathom in order for you to give it an Islamic ruling to be permissible or impermissible. He said, لا يليق. It is not even fathomable. It's not even appropriate to even consider under any circumstance that a man would combine two opposites. That he would strike his wife like a man would strike a camel, or like a man would strike his slave. And as if there is no connection between him and her. Right? As if there's no ilaqa, there's no connection between him and her, and then turn around at the end of the day and be intimate with her. It's not even fathomable that a man could do that. Because these are two naqidain. These are two opposites. It's oxymoronic to think that you would beat a woman like a man would beat his, a man would beat his ba'ir, or a man would beat his camel, or like a slave owner would beat his slave, as if there is no connection between you and the woman. Like you don't even know her. You beat this woman like there's no connection, like she's a complete stranger. And then turn around at the end of the day and have sexual relations with her. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala said, كيف يجامعها في آخر اليوم كيف يضاجعها. How could a man even do something? How could he beat his wife and then turn around and have sex with her? He said, وَلِهَذَا تَعَجَّبَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ بِهَذَا. He said, and this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was amazed. Amazed. How? Like, he said, فَهَذَا لَا يَلِيقُ بِالْإِنسَانِ الْعَاقِلِ فَضْلًا عَنْ مُؤْمِنٍ. He said, this is not even appropriate behavior of someone who has sound mind, let alone someone who is a believer. Let alone someone who say they believe in Allah. Let alone somebody who says they believe in Allah in the last day. This is not even the behavior of someone with sound mind. Let alone somebody who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you understand? So, you have brothers who will beat their wives physically or emotionally abuse them and then turn around and say, let's have sex. And then when she's scarred, she can't bring herself to be intimate with you. Then we turn around and spiritually, so we physically abuse them, emotionally abuse them, and then we ask them to have sex, right? And then when they refuse, then we spiritually abuse them. We turn around and we'll use the text saying that the angels are going to curse you into the morning. It's like, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. And it goes on every day. Every day. Every day. And it becomes the entire Islamic community's responsibility to ensure the safety of those who are vulnerable in our community. Women are vulnerable in our communities. Women are vulnerable in our communities. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that was collected in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. He said, Allahumma inni uharriju haqq al-da'ifain al-yatim wal-mar'a. He said, oh Allah, I have issued a severe warning against the two categories of weak people in my community. And that is the yatim, the orphan, and the woman. The two categories of vulnerable people in our communities are the orphans and the women. He said, and I have issued a warning. This is the Prophet ﷺ saying, Allahumma inni uharriju haqqa da'ifain. Oh Allah, I issue a warning in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who oppress the two vulnerable people, the two vulnerable categories of people in our community, and that is al-yatim, the orphan, wal-mar'a, and the woman. You understand? So women in the community are vulnerable, And so the last thing I want to mention is a hadith that took place in the community of the Prophet ﷺ. And I want to show you how the community of the Prophet ﷺ stood up to domestic violence against women, and where we are failing in this regard, where we're failing at this. All right. So the hadith of Tamima bint Wahab. This was a woman. This was a woman during the time of the Prophet ﷺ who was abused, was hit by her husband. All right. The Prophet ﷺ, on the authority of, or the scholars, they say that, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that women in the community, they were always protected in the community of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ made a vow that anyone that infringes on the rights of the weak in his community, and that was the woman and the orphan, that he made a promise before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to extract retribution against those who did that. Meaning there was zero tolerance in the community of the Prophet ﷺ for atrocities against women and against orphans. Understand? There was zero tolerance. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in another hadith, "Hal tunsaruna wa turzaquna illa bidu'afaikum." That are you even aided and assisted and provided for except because of the weak that is in your community? The weak. These are the only reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to aid our communities and to provide for our communities is because of the weak that are in our communities. And we see weakness as an opportunity to take advantage. And the Prophet ﷺ swore to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that made an oath that anyone who takes advantage of the weak that was in this community, he would extract retribution. فإن الإنسان كلما كان أضعف كانت عناية الله سبحانه وتعالى به أتم. So the weaker that a person is, understand this, sisters and brothers, the weaker that a person is, the more concentration Allah will give to his or her circumstance. Understand? The weaker you are in the situation, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rush to aid your circumstance. Right? And even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, كانت النساء إذا تعرضن للضرب لجأن لمن يدافع عنهن ويصون كرامتهن وهو بيت النبوة عليه الصلاة والسلام. That during in the community of the Prophet ﷺ, that when women were subjected to physical abuse or any other type of abuse, they turned to the one place where they knew that they would get help and assistance from, and that was the house of the Prophet ﷺ. So this hadith that I'm talking about is collected in Sahih al-Bukhari on the authority of Ikrimah. أن رفاعة طلق امرأته. A companion by the name of Rifa'a, he divorced his wife for the third time. فتزوجها عبد الرحمن ibn الزبير القرظي. So another companion married his ex-wife, Abdurrahman ibn Zubair al-Quradi. He married Rifa'a's ex-wife. قالت Aisha, and Aisha is narrating, as it happened. وعليها خمار أخضر. She came to this woman, Tamima. She came to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she had on a green jilbab. She had on a green garment. Showing you this whole idea of wearing black, and the Sahabiyat wore black. Man, miss me with all that. Ibn Battal, in his explanation of this hadith, he said, وَالثِّيَابِ الْخُضَرِ من لباس الأهل الجنة وكفى بذلك شرف لها. He said, and green is the color of the people of Jannah, and that is sufficient as a virtue for this woman to have on green. This whole idea where you gotta wear black and it's haram to wear any other color. Man, miss me with all of that, man. There's no concrete text that says that. And we buy into this stuff, man, with no dalil. Brothers and sisters, stop buying into. The only way that we avoid falling into cult behavior again is when we educate ourselves to our religion. Educate yourself to your religion, man. Stop letting somebody come by because they speak a little Arabic, because they went here to study, and then come and then superimpose on us their interpretation of Islam. Seek knowledge. This hadith is right here in Sahih al-Bukhari. It's been here the whole time. Aisha said that وَعَلَيْهَا جَاءَتْ وَعَلَيْهَا خِمَارٌ أَخْضَرٌ. She came to me and she had on a green overgarment. فشكت إليها وأرتها خضرة بجلدها. And when she came to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha complaining about her husband's abuse of her, she showed Aisha a green mark on her arm. And Aisha, she said, فلما جاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والنساء ينصر بعضهن بعضا قالت عائشة ما رأيت مثل ما يلقى المؤمنات لجلدها أشد خضرة من ثوبها. Aisha, when she saw the green mark on her arm from her husband abusing her, physically abusing her. When the Prophet ﷺ came, as Ikrimah narrated in the hadith, he said, وَالنِّسَاء يَنْصُرَ بَعْضُهُنَّ بَعْضًا. That women, they aided each other. Women, they aided each other. Aisha said to Tamima, no, we're going to the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet came home, Aisha went to him and she said, O Messenger of Allah, I've never seen Muslim women, I've never seen believing women experience the like of which I've seen this woman experience of physical abuse. She said the green mark on her arm is greener than the overgarment that she has on. Obviously, if a person is very light-skinned, if they get hit, it's going to leave a green-black mark on them, right? Aisha said that I've never seen believing women experience what I've seen this woman experience. She said that the mark on her is greener than the overgarment that she has on. أَشَدَّ خُضْرَةٍ مِّن ثَوْبِهَا. She has on a green garment, but the green mark on her arm is greener than the garment that she has on. Meaning he hurt her. And Aisha wasn't standing for it. She said, no, we're taking this to the Prophet ﷺ. Unlike what the sisters do today. Right? You sisters sit back and you say nothing. Nothing. You know the sister, you know your sister in Islam is marrying a brother who is a domestic abuser. You know because he abused you. You know because he abused another one of your friends. You know, and you don't say nothing because it's not your place to say nothing. But it is your place to backbite her when it goes down. It is your place to backbite her and talk about her after everything goes down, right? But it's not your place to say anything when your sister in Islam is about to marry a domestic abuser. You guys kill me, and y'all going to be responsible before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah. Listen to me. Ikrimah said, وَالنِّسَاء يَنْصُرَ بَعْضُهُنَّ بَعْضًا. And women, during that time, they aided one another. They helped one another. And will cut you off for being a victim. You damn right. Absolutely. And y'all sit back and y'all say nothing. 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 MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Ikrimah said, وَالنِّسَاء يَنْصُرُ بَعْضُهُنَّ بَعْضًا. And women, they aided one another during that time. Aisha, when she saw that, she said, no, not going to happen. Not my friend. And she went to the Prophet ﷺ. She said, O Messenger of Allah, the green mark on her arm is greener than the garment that she has on. وَسَمِعَ أَنَّهَا قَدْ أَتَتْ نَبِيَّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَجَاءَ وَمَعَهُ إِبْنَانِ لَهُ مِنْ غَيْرِهَا. And so the husband heard that his wife went to the Prophet ﷺ. So he grabbed two of his sons, right? Here go the coming as the I'm not that bad of a guy, right? I'm not that bad of a guy. Sisterhood is no sisterhood. Let's just call it what it is. There is no sisterhood. Every sister in our community is for self. There is no sisterhood. Sisterhood is dead. That stuff played out, back in the mid-90s. that played out in the mid-90s. All the sisters is for self. We want to marry our husband, ride off into the sunset, and hope nobody else asks about my husband. My husband don't want to marry nobody else because, the Islamic community is dysfunction, and I don't want none of that in my life, and I just want to live my life as a, Muslim and die and, go to Jannah. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Grandiose ideas of, what Muslim life is supposed to be like. A bunch of backbiting, scorned women. You're daggone right about that. You ain't never lied. You ain't never lied. We get so wrapped up in our pain, that's all we see is pain, right? If you a hammer, then everything you see look like a nail. If you see the world through pain, then that's all you see is pain. That's all you know how to interact with people is through pain, right? What did the Prophet ﷺ say when he tried to make, peace with Quraysh and they still wanted to fight? He said, and they were consumed by war. That's all they know is war. I'm trying to make peace with them. I'm trying to make a peace treaty and just live in peace. But when a person has been scorned, has been hurt so many times, they don't know peace. All they know is pain. All they know is pain. They don't know peace. Peace don't live here no more. And it seems like the sisters in our communities, all they see the Muslim community through the pain of their, and when you listen to them talk, it's all pain. It's all pain, man. All of it. I don't mess with them sisters because this, and I don't mess with them. It's all pain. As if our entire Islamic experience on this earth has been nothing but pain. Has been nothing but pain. So when he heard that his wife went to the Prophet ﷺ, he grabbed two of his children from a previous marriage and he ran to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him, are these your two sons? And he said, yes. And she spoke, Tamima, she said, O Messenger of Allah, Wallahi, ma li ilayhi min dhanbin illa anna ma ma'ahu illa bi aghna anni min hadihi wa akhadat hudbatu thawb min thawbiha. She said, O Messenger of Allah, the only sin that I committed, the only thing that I did wrong with this man is the fact that he's impotent. He can't please me. She grabbed a piece of her garment and she went like this to show the Prophet ﷺ how small, his private area was. And the Prophet ﷺ, tabassama, he just smiled because the woman was, very, very bold about, what she was saying. She said, basically, the only thing I did wrong was that the man just couldn't handle the fact that he's impotent. And the husband spoke and said, no, O Messenger of Allah, I've given this woman ample sexual relations. However, she wants to go back to her first husband. And that's pretty much why. The point here is the assistance of the other women in the community. And there's no social or communal responsibility or accountability. So sisters continue to be abused by brothers who continue to get away with it. And our children continue to believe that this dysfunction is normal. Our children continue to believe that this dysfunction is normal. It's normal. This is the new norm in the Islamic community. Dysfunction. And so we have generational abuse, right? Grandmothers who've been abused, to daughters who have been abused, to mothers who have been abused, to daughters who have been abused, and to granddaughters who are now being abused. Because there's high rates of domestic violence amongst young people. So now you got young people in marriages, 20, 21, 22, who are granddaughters in a line of abused women. Generational abuse. The woman who, the word in Arabic for the woman who, he called her Nashiza, Turidu Rifa'a, that she was the one creating marital discord because she actually wants to go back to her first husband, Rifa'a. And the Prophet ﷺ told her, well, that can't happen until until she consummates the marriage with you, because he divorced her for the third time. So she can't even go back to the first husband. We have generational abuse. Grandmothers who are victims of domestic abuse, mothers, daughters, and granddaughters, all in a line of abused, bitter women. The Prophet ﷺ, in ending, he said, "Ataf al-layla bi-ali Muhammad nisa'un kathir." The Prophet ﷺ got up and he addressed his community, because he started to see this epidemic of this pre-Islamic behavior of beating women that they still have not gotten rid of, right? They haven't eradicated this, right? So the Prophet ﷺ stood up and addressed the community, and he said that women have come to the houses of the Prophet of Muhammad ﷺ for this night, and there were 70. Imagine 70 women flocking to the house of the Prophet ﷺ to complain about the abuse they were experiencing from their husbands. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Kulluhunna yashtakina azwajahunna," all of them complaining about the abuse that they received from their husbands. He said, "Fala tajiduna ulaika khiyarakum." He said that you will not find the men that put their hands on their women to be the best of men. You will not find them to be the best of men. All right. So this is just a drop in the bucket, man. I mean, like there's so much to to be discussed with this topic. Nonetheless, for those of the Muslim women who say things like, "Oh, none of the imams are talking about this." Okay, so now what? None of the imams are talking about it. Just a broad blanket statement. None of the imams are talking about this. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And you have Muslim women who, and the sad thing about it is that when these things are, spoken about, it's almost like what the larger community does to the Muslim community. Why don't imams speak out against, terrorism? It's like, imams have been speaking about terrorism. Why do y'all conveniently choose to ignore when we do speak about it? Why do you conveniently choose to ignore? Because it gives more credence to your comment when you stand in public and say, none of the imams are speaking about it. It gives credence to your comment, because now you can say, well, I never heard nobody speak about it. Well, adam shay la yadulla ala adamihi, as the scholars have a qaida, principle, that the lack of knowledge of something doesn't mean that the thing doesn't exist. Just because you don't know that it exists doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But you have sisters that get out here and say, oh, none of the imams are speaking about this, or blah, blah, blah. Man, go have a seat. Have several seats. Talking about imams are not talking about this. For years, imams have been talking about this stuff. It just doesn't get the credit that it does. Not that imams do it for credit, but don't simply say that none of the imams are speaking about this. And then when somebody from the another community speaks about it, then we'll say, oh, mashallah, I'm so glad you're speaking about these issues because none of the imams. It's like, man, let's go sit down somewhere, man. Have a seat. Have several seats. So glad you speaking about these issues because nobody's speaking about these issues. Are you kidding me? You conveniently choose to ignore the African American representation of Islam. And these are some of our own sisters, feminists, who want to have so much hatred in their heart, so much pain running through their blood. You want to remove African American representation from the Islamic narrative altogether. Sorry, not going to happen. As long as I'm here, not going to happen. As long as I'm here, not going to happen. African American representation of the Islamic narrative is here. It's here. I'm not going nowhere until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides otherwise. But yeah, you got these, academic, Muslim woman feminists, jump out here, you promote every other narrative other than your own. Instead of putting your hand in the hands of imams and students of knowledge that are actually out here putting in work, we would rather condemn them and blame them and belittle them and how ignorant they are and how because they don't have a PhD or because they didn't graduate from this university or that university, then that makes them ignorant. But they've been putting in the work. The only reason why you have a platform to speak is because you are stepping on the backs of the imams that preceded you. And you're not in a position to critique the imams. If you got a degree in anything other than Islam, you don't have the position to critique the imams and the students of knowledge. You're not that person. You're not that person. Stay in your lane. Speak about the things that you are proficient in and you are qualified to speak about. But you are not qualified to condemn and to blame and to critique the leadership of his leadership. Critiques leadership. You're not in a position to do that. If I decide to jump out there and criticize another imam or criticize or whatever the case may be, I have a right to do that because I'm criticizing myself because I'm in that same lane. But you don't have a right to jump out there and say what imams ain't doing and what imams are doing. And you live in your little bubble, hiding behind the 3 letters that represent your whole repertoire. PhD. That's all you stand for. You don't have nothing behind that. I don't have a PhD. I don't have a PhD. I don't have letters that I hide behind that represent me. Letters don't represent me. My faith in God represents me. That's it. My faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the competence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me that I'm grateful for represents me. 3 letters, PhD, that's in front of my name or in back of my name does not represent me. And they damn sure don't represent the Islamic community. And it damn sure does not give you a platform to critique and blame and criticize the leadership that has come. Only leadership can do that. You're not in a position to do that. You're not in a position. So let me end with some things that I think will be very helpful. I'm very tempted to call out some names. I'm not going to do that, but I'm very, very tempted to call out some names because it's 2017, man. I don't have the energy to be diplomatic, man. Call a spade. It is what it is. I don't particularly care. I mean, like, you can get in line with the rest of the people who have taken issue with me. I really don't care. I don't because it's not contributing to our narrative. It's subtracting, it's taking away. Right, exactly. As soon as you challenge them to a debate, go do research and you're uneducated, blah, 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 and all the jargon. It is what it is. Stay in your lane of competency and you'll be okay. But you step outside of that lane and you know what I'm saying? Like you start talking about imams and start criticizing imams. You playing a dangerous game because you ain't built like that. You're not built like that. You know? All right, so some of the things I think that will help the community is, number one, we have to remove this stigma that is surrounding domestic abuse. We tend to think that when sisters are in a domestically abusive situation, that there's something wrong with them. They shouldn't have married into that situation. You know, they shouldn't have did this and they should have known better. And I'm like constantly saying to sisters, like, you got to be kidding me. You on Instagram, you on Facebook, you talking about sisters, you know, you sitting from a place of privilege. Until you have been in a domestically abusive situation and you've experienced that firsthand, you should not be so quick to be judgmental of sisters who've been in those situations. You don't know. Obviously, it didn't start off as abuse. Nobody goes into, walk into 50 punches to the face. Nobody walks into that. There was a process. There was a psychological conditioning that this man was walking this woman on. Like, nobody just walks into that. Sisters need to start using their logic. Sisters need to start being smart and using common sense. Damn it, if common sense was the only issue, we wouldn't even be having these discussions. You got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. So the only sisters that get caught in these domestically abusive situations are sisters who don't use their intellect? Sisters who don't use common sense? You have got to be kidding me, man. How do you judge? Malakum kayfa tahkumun, as Allah says in the Quran. What is wrong with you? And how do you judge? Understand something about a person who is a domestic abuser. Domestic abusers don't have qualities and characteristics that you can see from the very beginning. You don't know that you're marrying a domestic abuser. You don't find that out until later. Nobody marries, nobody, you know what I mean? Nobody walks into a domestically abusive situation for you to say, sisters need to start doing this and sisters need to start doing that. Subhanallah al-Azim. How dismissive is that? So basically, the sister goes into a situation, right? And and she's abused and all of this other stuff. And then after that, she's still abused by the Muslim community because now we calling her stupid. She's stupid for marrying into the situation anyway. She should have saw that coming. MashaAllah, she should have saw that coming, right? She was in a domestically abusive situation and she should have saw that coming. You gotta be kidding me, man. You know what I mean? Like, subhanAllah, they're already in an abusive situation and we create this stigma. And this is why, believe it or not, this is why some sisters stay in abusive situations, because they know that ain't nobody out there going to help you. Once you come out of that abusive situation, like, all right, removing yourself from him is one thing. Removing yourself from the home is one thing. Dealing with the psychological trauma is a whole other journey. It's a whole other journey. And there's no cushion from the community to help with that journey because the stigma supersedes the help that she would receive from the community. So now she's looked at as brainless, as stupid from going into the situation. Why didn't she, see this? Why didn't she see that? Whatever the case may be. It's like you furthering the pain. It's like you're an outcast. Absolutely. So that's number one. We need to remove the stigma surrounding domestic abuse. Number two, we need to stop letting men isolate women from the community, from their family, from their friends. Stop letting men isolate you. It's a process. You got to see it early on from the very beginning. When you haven't, you married your daughter off and then you don't see your daughter for months on end. And you know what I mean? Like, come on, man. You got to stop letting men isolate you from your family. When you start to see that, no man wants, like, okay, sometimes the family might be dysfunctional. Okay, but you kind of learn how to love them from, a distance, but you don't completely isolate her from her family. And when a woman sees that a man is doing that, he's cutting you off from your friends, cutting you off from your community, cutting you off from, your family. All right? Understand what's happening to you. Understand what is happening to you. Stop letting men isolate you from your community, from your friends, from your families. Because once he gets you on an island by yourself, that's when the abuse starts. There's Shani Baraka Women's Resource Center in Newark, New Jersey. Alhamdulillah. You sisters, share your resources, man. Network. Share your resources, whether in Philadelphia, whether in Jersey, whether DC, Maryland, New York. Share your resources. Number three, we have to create communal responsibility for all forms of abuse. There's going to be a responsibility. The entire community is responsible. And how do we make people responsible? As we begin to address abuse openly. So men feel ashamed. They feel the social pressure, right? They feel the social pressure of the Islamic community. That more imams, more students of knowledge are doing lectures and, at least sticking some of this information into some of their lectures to create an awareness. To create an awareness so that, men will feel more ashamed and they will be more responsible in front of the community. Number four. Educate yourself to the Islamic guidelines regarding the husband's rights and what they are and what they are not. And under what conditions should those rights be fulfilled. You understand? Educate yourself, sisters, to what the husband, and brothers too. You need to educate because you might have been miseducated. There's a lot of miseducation about Islam going on in our communities. There's a lot of miseducation going on in our communities about Islam. And about what the husband's rights are. And about what the wife's rights are. Understand? So educate yourself. Create halakas, women's halakas and women's circles. And talk about the rights of the brothers. You don't necessarily need a man to teach you what the man's rights are. You need somebody who is educated to teach you what the man's rights are. Because obviously if the man is teaching what the man's rights are, he's speaking from a place of bias. That's a bias. If I'm teaching sisters what the husband's rights are, then obviously I'm going to, embellish that a little bit and I'm going to make it seem like it's more than what it really is. Sisters, you got to get educated, man. Stop with all these fashion shows and all this other stuff, man. Get to some real learning. Get to some real learning. It's not difficult. Education is very, we got sisters that are educated. And if you don't have sisters that are educated, you got, courses, you got, things going on in the community where you can learn. They will take advantage of you because of your ignorance. Don't you come in talking about, I just want a brother to teach me my religion. Got one. Got one. Oh, you don't know your religion? You need a brother to teach you religion? Okay, I'll be that dude. I'm going to teach you your religion. And I'm going to miseducate the crap out of you so I can continue manipulating your behind. Invest in yourself, man. Take a course. Understand, learn your rights. Learn the rights of the men. That's the most important. It's not necessarily learning what your rights are. Yeah, that's important too. But the thing is that if you marry a good Muslim man, he's going to give you your rights regardless. But what you need to know more importantly is what is his rights. What are his rights? So that you are upon clarity about that. So he can't use that to manipulate you. Nah, you're not going to do that to me. I know what your rights are. Knowledge is available and accessible. Absolutely. No excuse for that. If you are ignorant, sometimes I don't even respond. Send me an email, or you send me a message on Instagram, send me a message on Facebook about something that you could have learned yourself. I'm not even going to respond. And many of the sisters know I'm not going to respond. You don't have to ask me, what's the process of divorce? Negro, you don't know what the process of divorce is? Why are you married? Why are you married? If you don't know what the process of divorce is, why are you married? I'm good on that. I'm not responding to none of those emails because it's redundant and you should know better. You should know better. If you had the maturity to go into the marriage, then you should have the maturity to know how to get the hell out of the marriage when stuff go haywire. You don't come to somebody asking somebody, how do I get out of this marriage? How did you get into it? How did you get into it? Why would you get into something that you don't know how to get out of? You've got to be kidding me. Yes, it is a laziness. Absolutely. And I'm not responding to that. Ask me something that's challenging. Make me go back and do some research myself. And let me come back to you with an answer. Don't ask me something you can just go do a Google search and get the answer for. Come on, man. Educate yourself to the Islamic guidelines regarding the husband's rights and what they are and what they are not. And under what conditions should those rights be fulfilled? Number 5, the first time the abuse happens, it has to be dealt with. The first time he even makes a threat to put his hands on you, because some women have been taught to suffer in silence. You've been taught to suffer in silence. You've been taught that since you was a kid. You were abused as a kid and you were told to be quiet and shut up and keep it a secret and not say anything. And that trickled over with you into adulthood. So now you have been conditioned to receive abuse and not say anything about it. You've been conditioned. Sometimes by our own parents. Our parents beat us, our parents whoop us and then tell us to shut up and you better not say anything. We're conditioned to tolerate abuse. So we have the first time a man makes, a threat to put his hands on you or put his hands on you, it has to be dealt with right there. Because if it's dealt with right there, then perhaps you will never have to revisit that again. Not necessarily the first hit is the last one, get out. We're not saying run for the hills. Because if the situation can be rectified, some men just have anger issues. Some men haven't been taught how to, filter that anger and to talk things out and to, deal with things. And, like some men weren't taught that. So it's not that, you want to stop him from becoming a domestic abuser, right? He's just using you as, as the way to start it off. But if you nip that in the bud from the beginning, then maybe he never has to become. Because if you say, first time he hit me, I'm out. All right, then he's going to go on and beat somebody else. He's going to go on to beat somebody else. And if that's the first time he's ever done that, or the first time he done it to you, maybe he beat somebody else before, but nobody ever dealt with that. Nobody ever handled him the way that you're about to handle him. Oh, no. First of all, I'm going to fight you back. That's number one. You ain't going to put your hands on me and just get away with that. I'm going to fight you back. You're going to beat me up, but at the same token, you're going to know that you ain't going to never put your hands on me without it being a fight. Sisters, stop being punks. You talk so much crap about other sisters. And then when the man is there putting his hand, no, fight back, man. Fight back. Fight back. Even if you get your behind whooped, fight back. At least he knows that this ain't going to go the way you thought it was going to go. This ain't going to go the way that you thought it was going to go. And then after it's all over, if we can learn how to reconcile that, then you need to get some help. You need to get help. Or if he makes an attempt or he grabs you and then you just let him know, like that's not the way that we're going to work. This is not the way we're going to, you're not fighting back to win. Obviously, you're not fighting back to win. You're fighting back to let him know the same way you would deal with a bully in high school. If you get your butt whooped, so what? But at least he knows that you're not a pushover and that every time you put your hands on me, we're going to fight. I'm not fighting back to win. I'm fighting back to let you know that this is not going to be, just a simple task. Let me hit you and keep it moving. No, sometimes calling the police makes the situation worse. Sometimes calling the police makes the situation worse. Which is why, we have Muslim police officers. We have people in the Muslim community, that can step in and that can help out with those things. We're trying to salvage the marriages. We're not saying like this happened, run. You know what I mean? Like if it's the first time, then we can salvage the situation. We can correct him and put him in a situation where he can learn how to get some help. So then that way, even if y'all do separate, at least he knows how to channel that anger. At least he's learned, how to deal with that. And not just that we just going to toss him to the side and say, he put his hands on you, run. Okay, so now when you run, get out of that situation. He marries somebody else and does the same thing. And in many instances, the police don't do a damn thing. They don't do anything. We have to police our own, man. And number 6, be careful of mentioning previous bouts with abuse during your sit down. All right. Sometimes exposing the fact that you've been in an abusive situation before makes you a victim. Sometimes when you expose the fact that you were abused in a situation and you're saying, I was in an abusive situation before and I don't want to go through that. I don't want to go through that again or whatever. In his mind, he's like, oh, you've been abused before? Okay. Because if he's a domestic abuser, he already knows how to manipulate you. He already knows how to manipulate you. So in his mind, he's thinking, oh, she's been abused before. Oh, she's been through that process before. Okay, I can take her through that process again. And he knows you're vulnerable. So sometimes it might be a good thing not to say at so early on in the stage of the sit down that you've been in an abusive situation, right? If you act like sheep, you're going to attract wolves. Keep telling you guys that all the time. You act like sheep, you're going to attract wolves. This is not the time to appear vulnerable. I'm just looking for a good brother. I've been hurt so many times and I've been in so many hurt relationships, or whatever the case may be, and you come off like the damsel in distress. And then you get the savior, the savior brother, the rescuer who want to come in and rescue and put you in another situation. It's very important that you don't expose that. And, if it's not necessary, if it's not necessary. So this is what I wanted to present. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I mean, obviously a man would disagree with me. It's cool. It's cool. My mother was a victim of domestic violence. Right? I was a victim of domestic violence. I have a scar on my head right here from a guy who hit me in the head with a pipe after blackening my mother's eye and beating on my mother. I have to live with this scar on my head for the rest of my life. So my mother as well as I were victims of domestic abuse. So yeah, this is more than just a lecture for me. This is trying to help you guys protect yourself as well as men. As well as men, man. We have to learn how to, we have to learn how to channel that energy, man. Channel that pain, man, and not take it out on, on the women that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put under our authority. So is it a God complex that we're suffering from, or is it just a case of hurt people hurting people? Because 9 times out of 10, the child that grows up in a domestically abusive household will also resort to domestic abuse. Yeah, I'm sure, man. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff, man. men need to consult with other men to understand that, putting your hands on a woman is not the solution. That's not the solution. I mean, it's nothing to be sorry about. It was an experience, and that experience is allowing me the energy that I have to give that to you right now. I'm not sorry for the situation that happened. My mother is deceased, but I mean, the experience still lives on with me. I seen that with my own eyes. You come home at 16 years old and you walk into your house and see your mother with, with her eye like this. You like, what? You know what I mean? And I mean, at that time, I was carrying guns at that time. So, I mean, like, it almost put me in a situation.
Did you say that over the internet? What is wrong with you?
I mean, I was a 16-year-old kid.
What's wrong with you?
So, it's the experience. It's nothing to be sad about, nothing to be sorry about. It was an experience. It was an experience. But that experience is what is giving me that energy to be able to give this to you today. All right? Any questions? Any questions or comments? I got enough for like 1 or 2 questions. The voice in the back, that was my wife saying I'm crazy for exposing that to you guys. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that my father actually happened to be at his girlfriend's house, which was very close by, and heard the commotion and came. And my father's at that time was kind of a big dude, and whatever happened. Just say that we didn't see the guy coming around anymore. That was the end of that. So, sisters, you guys gotta form that sisterhood, man. You gotta form that sisterhood, man, and we have to do our part. We sitting around waiting for the leadership, Islamic leadership. If we sitting around waiting for the masjid, like, no, we no longer waiting for that, man. How can we advise our father if they are abusive towards our mother? How can I play a role here? Sometimes, fathers might need to hear from other fathers. Sometimes, going to a men's group and things like that. Sometimes, maybe, bringing a police officer to the home and letting them see, what the consequences of that is. Some states have very strict laws as it relates to domestic abuse. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not an expert in terms of, the help piece. You know what I mean? Like, Dr. Rashida Abdul Khabir out of Philadelphia. She deals with a lot of these situations. So maybe, in the future, we can have her, come on and talk a little bit more about the clinical aspect and what you can do in these type of situations. I'm not a clinician. That's not my job. I'm giving you the psychology of it, and I'm giving you from an Islamic perspective, what Islam says about it. That's my job. The clinical piece, you need a professional for that. And I don't know too many people like Dr. Rashida, who's in this area, who's close by. But I think you guys need to organize, conferences, lectures, and stuff like this that's surrounding this. Go to your local imam, go to your students of knowledge. You see all these lectures and all of these things coming up. It doesn't hurt to, pick up, a phone and say, hey, listen, why are you guys not addressing these issues? How can we respectfully encourage her to get back into the religion? My mother went through I guess you're saying that your mother went through some issues like this. And maybe, I don't know, distance herself from Islam. How do you get her to come back to Islam? Well, Islam wasn't the culprit. Islam, didn't do it. And that's a process. When a man is using the religion to justify the pain that he inflicts on his woman, obviously she starts to see Islam as, part of the process. She starts to see Islam as part of that abuse process. And so to distance herself from imams, from the masjid, and distance herself from Islam, that's a process. And, she has to start to trust Islam and trust, the community. And for the most part, many have lost trust in the Islamic community. Real talk. Many have lost faith in the Islamic community altogether, which in turn begins to affect the way that they, their faith in Islam. Yes, absolutely. I mean, you gotta advise with rifq, with gentleness and leniency, and and just trying to, but because basically you're trying to restore their faith in something that they have actually lost faith in. That's essentially what you're doing, and that's a whole other conversation, man. Whole other conversation. So I gotta go. You guys were great, mashallah, tabarakallah. So stay tuned for the next Man Logic, which will be next Thursday, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Title to be disclosed later. Yes, please restore your faith. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost to restore your faith. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, Jaddidu imanakum, renew your faith. Right? Faith is like a garment. After you wear it enough, it starts to wear out. So you have to renew your faith. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for all of us who have been hurt by this monster of domestic violence, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to heal in a healthy manner, and allows us to, pull our resources together as a community and begin to protect those in the community that, may in the future be, victims of domestic violence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Periscope, I'm sorry you guys had to be quiet today. Sorry about that.